See the gourds now.
So this is native squash?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
One of its names is Calabacida.
Calabacida?
Calabacida.
So look at this. The Native Americans had native squash right here in San Diego. There's a squash blossom right there. I've seen this in Tecolote.
It's a fairly, it's a very
Tecolote has
common
squash.
plant.
Tecolote Canyon area. So the natives had squash. That's amazing.
Oh, I see a squash.
See, you see a squash? Well, it kind of grows everywhere.
Little melon.
Speaking of Iowa, we grew a lot of squash and melons. Oh, there it is. Look at that. Look at those guys.
Alan, let me slip in here. Which one is the better one for you, the close one or the...
Oh, this one is a prettier one. That one.
Oh, here, let me get down lower.
Look at that. Don't break it off. Look at that. There you go.
Yeah.
So if I was a Native American, I'd be bringing some squash close to my village, because look at that. That is wonderful.
They're pretty, but
They're not very tasty.
the meat's not.
Oh, really?
Might be able to eat the seeds.
The seeds, I believe, are edible.
There you go.
The other thing the Native Americans would use these for were making rattles.
Oh, there you go. Yep. Interestingly,
Other people use gourds even currently.
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly.
Musical instrument.
And interesting, the Kumeyaay did not have drums. They used gourd rattles.
Right.
So that's
So
kind of
even
interesting.
though today, if you went to a Kumeyaay gathering,
Yes.
they probably would be using drums.
Ah.
They were not part of the pre-European
There you go.
culture.
As they also wouldn't have had horses pre-European either, right?
Which is a strange story because
Yes.
my understanding is horses actually evolved
Yes.
in the New World.
There were horses in Anza Borrego County. There's evidence all over the place of horses and camels and 8-foot sloths, and that's a whole set talk on itself.
And then the horses from the Americas migrated to Europe,
Okay,
so the European continent.
interesting.
They died out here.
They migrated to Europe, or they were taken to Europe?
No, they wouldn't have been taken.
Oh, okay.
This is ancient, 12,000 years ago.
Oh, yeah, the horse,
But the opposite did
then the
happen.
horses were brought back to the
Then the
New
Spanish brought the horses back to the Americas,
There you
and the Native Americans became some of the best horsemen
Yes,
in the world.
and the Mexicans too, the
Absolutely.
caballeros.
Absolutely.
So all the pictures you see of cowboys and Indians, that's after the Europeans got here, right?
Well,
Yes. And yeah.
cowboys.
Or when you see a
European,
beautiful painting
Yes,
or
there you go.
photograph of a proud Native American on a horse, you know that had to be after at least the late 1700s.
Right. And I actually had an interesting thought. So the Native Americans here, the Kumeyaay ancestors, went from the ocean through the valleys all the way up to Vulcan Mountain and Julian area and into the desert and all the way back. They migrated back and forth. And I even posed the question to Stan Rodriguez, the elder of the Kumeyaay here in town. And I said, so how do they do that? That's a long ways. I mean, it takes 2 hours to get to the desert in a car. And he laughed. He said, well, we didn't do it all in one day. But they did it. They did not have horses. They did not have the wheel. So they had to carry whatever they had or make it with them wherever they went.
Really strong wives.
Hey, careful.
A lot of kids.
A lot of kids. So what they did is they would make camps. So they'd have their awa maybe here. They'd have one by the ocean, and then they'd have one all the way up into the mountain, and they would kind of move from camp to camp, is what they did.
So this is something I'm not totally sure of, but I thought I had been told also. So the Kumeyaay were in tribes.
Bands,
They're
yes.
different bands. And not necessarily a band from, say, the coast would make it all the way to the desert, but the bands would trade amongst themselves. So it's sort of like this band would maybe go from La Jolla up to the Cuyamacas, but they wouldn't be the band that would then go down into the desert. But the desert band would come up to the
up and down the
Cuyamacas,
mountain.
and there would be exchange of, ideas.
Interesting.
Marriages would happen. So while it's not necessarily one person made it from desert to ocean, The group in general did.
I don't know. That would be a good question for the Stan or the
Exactly,
Kumeyaay
that
group,
would be a
because
great
I don't
question
know,
for
because he
Stan.
didn't say that. It's possible. That makes sense, all the sense in the world. I've seen villages in Blair Valley, and then I've seen villages up in the Lagunas. So they would come back and forth up and down that mountain. I don't know, but I do know that when there was acorn time, and the black oaks were their favorite to get their acorns, the black oaks are up in the Lagunas. And so they would go up there, and they each had their own spot. So I don't know the Kumeyaay names, but let's say the Smith family had their camp here, and the Joneses had theirs over here, and the Wilsons were over here, and they would have their own oak trees. And then so that's where they would get their acorns. But if the Wilsons had a bad year and that oak tree didn't produce, then the others would help them with their acorns. So they're very community-oriented group. So that would be an interesting question. I would love to have
see Stan, I think.
Stan or someone talk to us. I think that would be a fabulous idea.
And you know, it was very common for a family stand of acorns to fail. In fact, that's kind of how acorn trees work. They don't produce big crops every year. They may for a couple of years, and then they'll take the year off.
I didn't know that.
And they seem to do it in groups. So if you're the unlucky family whose group of acorns or oaks is taking this year off, you rely on your neighbors, because your neighbors know, boy, next year it might be my trees that don't produce.
That's true.
So it was a very sensible arrangement. Instead of, you know,
There you
what
go.
we'd probably do is we'd sue our neighbors or start a fight with them and try and take over. And the Kumeyaay were far
No,
more
they would
clever
not
than
do that. Not even close. As a matter of fact, I remember hiking up behind Paso Picacho, up on the hillside up there. There was a stand of oaks, and I saw some black oaks and go, wow, what a beautiful stand of black oaks. And then right down below was a great big motero, flat rock with grinding stones dug into it, several of them. I mean, right there, beautiful, the whole thing. I have to say the Native American women knew how to choose their grinding stone spots, because almost every single one that I've found or been shown, the view is just stunning.
Well, you know, I like to call that Kumeyaay TV. Because you're going to be sitting in this spot for hours, day after day. And, you know, you have your other family members to talk to.
Sure.
But at some point, you know, the conversation's going to stop.
It's true.
And instead of having TV like we do, they just had these amazing views that they got to watch.
Yes. And what I also thought is that the mothers are sitting there, they're watching their kids play, and they're also watching their husbands off there going, not that pine tree, get the next one. They have better better pine nuts than that one. Go over that way, go over that way. And he's way over there. I'm thinking they're watching everybody, too.
Well, and I also believe in some cases they were watching for danger.
Oh,
because,
yes.
you know, they had these expansive views.
Yes.
And, you know, the Kumeyaay did from time to time have dust-ups with other groups.
Yes, they did.
So you can kind of be watching your neighbors. Oh, these guys are coming over to make some trouble, and you can alert everybody.
There you go.
So.
Well, on Coles Mountain, there is a lookout that they use to look out toward the east. There, it's carved into one of the stones there. I thought it was interesting that Stan also told in our class that the Kumeyaay were they were a very calm band of natives here for thousands and thousands of years, and they weren't aggressive, but they weren't passive. And he says, if you'll notice, the Spaniards never got past Jamul to the east. So they took a stand somewhere. They never got farther east. They never got into the mountains here.